Welcome to the Life Coach Lounge. I'm Angela.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Emily.
This isn't a podcast for coaches. It's for you, for real people navigating real life. It's lighthearted, it's deep, and it's grounded in faith, friendship, and purpose.
And once a month, you can join us in our virtual Life Coach Lounge on Zoom.
So pull up a seat. The Life Coach Lounge is open.
Do you often feel stuck making decisions, big or small? Today, we're talking about how to become a confident decision maker beyond the overthinking, the decision fatigue, and endless pros and cons lists. We will cover what staying stuck really costs us, simple tools to manage those everyday choices to make them easier, and how to tackle the big decisions with real confidence and peace. Welcome to another episode of the Life Coach Lounge. If you're new here, my name is Emily, and I am here with two of my very best friends, Angela and Lisa. I have a question for both of you, but first, let's start with a definition. We like to define words here in the lounge, and I thought this would be a good one to start with a definition. So what does it mean to be decisive? Decisive means settling an issue, making choices quickly without doubt, or being very clear and obvious. Synonyms of the word decisive would be confident, determined, resolute. Antonyms would be indecisive, hesitant, unresolved, uncertain, and doubtful. So with all of that in mind, Angela and Lisa, the word decisive, on a scale of I decide in 5 seconds to I need a sign from heaven, where do you land when it comes to making decisions, big or small? Who wants to get us started?
I'm going to say I'm probably in the middle, leaning closer to I will just make the decision. Now, was I always that way? No. But if I'm asking the question today, where my feet are, that is the answer. Not that I don't love a good sign from heaven, a little nudge in the right direction. Always welcome, but probably in the middle, leaning towards I'll decide in the next few minutes.
Awesome. Angela, where do you fall?
So it's interesting to me that when I was thinking about this, I feel like I have evolved as I've aged, but not in the direction you would think. I mean, I have gone from, 36 years ago saying yes to a marriage proposal after only knowing Jim 3 weeks to, now we sold our home and we're essentially homeless for 4.5 years because we could not decide on a house. So I feel like I don't even think it's self-trust. I just think it's more, I've become more, and I see it in Jim too, actually, like more risk averse almost. I don't know.
So you need a sign from God?
Overthinking it. I need a sign from God. And I don't want that. I want to make powerful, confident, quick decisions.
So interesting for you to share that and to notice that about the two of you. I would say I, for most of my life, leaned more towards I want the sign from heaven because the whole idea of I need to get it right. I can't mess it up. What if it's the wrong decision? The overthinking definitely was where I camped out for many, many, many years. And I am more in the middle now. And also you will hear me saying, even to myself under my breath, just decide, just make a decision, just do it. So I can make decisions in 5 seconds. At this stage of my life, I couldn't always do that. Super interesting to notice how we've changed and evolved and where we are now. So let's talk about being stuck and what it actually costs us. So indecision can leave us feeling stuck. And I just want to say this is normal, and I am guessing extremely relatable to most of our listeners. Feeling stuck in indecision doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's not a flaw. It's just a common trap. And it can quickly become a habit without even realizing it. I am living proof. But here's the thing, not deciding is a decision, and it comes with a cost. So let's talk about those costs. What are the costs to staying stuck in indecision, hesitation, or uncertainty? Angela, what would you say comes to mind first?
Oh my word. So many things. It is emotionally draining. Overthinking is draining. Yeah. Make a decision and your brain will quiet down right away.
So
So,
true.
yeah, I just feel like making the decision is good mental health practice.
And physical health, because if you let that stew for too
Exactly.
long and you spiral out on it for too many days, like it can start to cause like a upset stomach or anxiety or yeah, like spinning in that indecision is not good for your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health.
Yeah. And I'm not saying don't, make a thoughtful decision or a prayerful decision, but make the decision.
Yes.
And that exhausting feeling that you were describing, all those things that Emily just listed, they're a domino effect. So I think when we are stuck, what do you call it? You turtle in, like we become more egocentric. And I don't mean that in a negative way per se. I mean that as we're stuck up in our own heads. But because that's where we're choosing to live, that domino effect is spilling out onto those around us. So even if we do our best to not show it to others, if you're married, your spouse is picking up on it. If you're a parent, your children are definitely picking up on it. If you work closely at work with other people, they are picking up on it. So it can be all those things you described, Angela, but in time, it will domino and spread
Absolutely.
like ivy. Like not poison ivy necessarily, but it will definitely be a ground cover and start to take over if you're not careful.
Yeah, so true. I also think too, like there could be missed opportunities. If you take too long to make a decision, say for a job opportunity or even a relationship, some other kind of opportunity, that boat can quickly sail past and then the opportunity is gone. Sometimes they're looking for you to be able to make that quick, thoughtful decision to get back to them. So you can miss out on opportunities as well. And then I think this was already mentioned, but you're not developing that self-trust. If you get stuck in indecision, then you are not relying on yourself. And then other people learn to maybe they can't rely on you if you're going to be wishy-washy or just be hesitant on things and uncertain. It's like just make a decision, a yes or a no. Maybe is rarely a good place to camp out in. So, yes, make it thoughtful, make it wise, but staying in the maybe category for too long is not a good place to camp out. So let's talk about something that we love to talk about here in the lounge, some strategies to make everyday decisions easier. And why is this useful? It's so that we can reduce decision fatigue and we can build that trust in ourselves. So we're just going to revisit some practical tips that we have shared here before. Habit stacking, making a plan, sticking to it. This is again to build that trust in yourself. It not only saves you time and energy, but more importantly, you get good at making small decisions so that when you need to make a big decision, you already have exercised that trust muscle in the little everyday decisions that you can count on yourself to make that bigger decision. So, some practical strategies, again, we've mentioned these before, that reduce decision fatigue in our everyday lives. I think of pre planning or planning ahead. We had a whole episode on what's for dinner, and we talked about planning ahead, even deciding on purpose, what is the weekly menu going to look like? Some people take it so far as to say, meatless Monday, taco Tuesday, soup on Wednesday, and they just follow that every week. That takes the decision about what's for dinner out of the question if you plan ahead. So, or even something like I like to check all of my bank balances on Tuesday. Tuesday is bank day. Then I'm not wondering throughout the week, how much money do we have? Did I pay that bill? Did somebody balance the checkbook? Like what's going on? Nope, I know. Tuesdays are the day that I do that. And once a week turns out is sufficient for how money comes in and goes out of our family. So pre-planning, being just a little bit more organized with some of those small decisions has been helpful for us. What else? What are some other practical strategies?
Well, as someone who has admitted in the past to, and I noticed this actually just today, like my perfectionist, like wanting to like jump to the front of the line, so to speak. I'm like, whoa, girl, slow your roll. But I think that I can speak for myself that perfectionism would masquerade as discernment. Like if you think about making a pros and cons list, which I thought pros and cons lists were the best thing ever. What perfectionist doesn't like a good pros and cons list? And now, if you ask me about a pros and cons list, I'd probably be like, meh. Like I don't find them as beneficial as I once did, because again, I think when you make the pros and cons list, you can have one thing on your pro list, or sorry, one thing on your con list, but if it has to do with things that are of great value to you, like your family, your faith, and then you have a bunch on the other side, that one is going to outweigh all those little things. So I don't really think pros and cons lists are as amazing as I once did. But I think being careful when it comes to being perfect at making the decision. Like I said, it's not masquerading discernment. You don't have to make a perfect decision. You can just take the next step in making that decision. So I have definitely learned that probably the hard way, more often than once.
Very relatable. I also feel the same about pros and cons list. That used to be my go-to anytime I had a decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's still helpful in the form of getting your thoughts and getting them out on paper so you can clearly see in front of you what are we actually dealing with here. But I agree with you, it's not the most helpful strategy. It's a good place to start, but there's so much more. And we'll get to that here in a few minutes for those bigger decisions. Angela, do you want to talk to us about habit stacking again? I know we've talked about that here before, but it's so good. It's just so helpful.
Yeah, so habit stacking is taking something you already do and adding something new at the same time, or at the same time. So for example, a year or two ago, I wanted to start incorporating more worship music into my day. And so now I started doing it then, and it's stuck. I turn on worship music when I take my shower and get ready in the morning. I've told you before that I put my workout clothes on right when I get up in the morning, and that I've done for years and years. You know, you talked about pre-planning. You girls know I do my laundry on Mondays and wash my sheets and do my ironing. I don't think about what I do on Mondays. I never schedule appointments on Mondays if I can help it, because I just know that I already know what I'm doing on Mondays. So yeah, routines. I love my morning routine, my evening routine. Jim always jokes that I get really grumpy if someone interrupts my routine. And it might be true. So, yeah, just having routines where, you don't have to think about what to do next. And it's interesting, we have a cottage, and recently we stayed up there for, I forget what it was, 10 or 12 days, something like that. And I had to like kind of relearn my routines when I was up there. And then I got into the routine again because I keep things in different places when, up there. And then when I came back home, like the same thing happened. I was like, okay, we're here again. Okay, I need to remember, what order I do things in. And yeah, it's very, very helpful to have those practices in place so that you don't have to spend as much time making all those tiny little decisions.
Yes, creating order, rhythm, routine, anywhere you can with the little things throughout your day is super helpful at reducing that decision fatigue. So let's move on to making big decisions. So think career change, a move, a leap of faith. So these tend to carry more weight. They may have higher stakes, maybe longer timelines. And with all of that, there might be some more fear coming in with the decision making part of it. It's good to remind ourselves, I have found that it's good for me to remind myself, it's still just a decision. So there may be extra emotions, there may be extra fear, but if I can feel those emotions, if I can recognize there's a little bit of fear there, then I can clearly understand the facts about the situation, the facts about the decision that needs to be made. And just a reminder too, when I set this up to say that these decisions tend to carry more weight, we even need to be careful about how we describe them, because even saying, oh, these are weightier, heavier, bigger decisions can make it feel heavier and bigger and weightier. But if we just look at it, strip away all of that extra and just say, it's still just a decision. What's my strategy? I know for me that has been very helpful to try and get the emotions felt and out of the way so that I can clearly look at it with fresh eyes. So you two both recently gave me some great friend advice as well as some coaching advice when I had a big decision to make. I had an opportunity before me and it would have completely changed my daily routine. It would have affected our whole family. And it was something I was very interested in. It was actually a job opportunity outside of the home, working outside the home, which I have not had that type of opportunity for a very, very, very long time. So it would have been a big change the way we function as a family. But I was also interested in the actual opportunity, in the actual work itself. And so that made it more difficult. I was really wanting to say yes, but something in me was hesitating besides it just being a change. And so both of you gave some great advice and great coaching strategies. And so I just want to talk about some of those today. One of the big things was, Lisa, you reminded me as I was spilling everything in the Marcos to both of you. Here's the situation. Here are the details. This is what I'm considering. And at one point I said, I'm really afraid that I might disappoint people if I say yes or if I say no. I don't want to disappoint anyone. If I say yes and I actually can't follow through on it, I'll disappoint them. If I say no, I feel like I'm going to disappoint them. And you, as a good friend always does, just gave it to me straight. And you're like, they don't really care as much as you think they do. It's okay. That's people pleasing. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's people pleasing. We don't want to do that. So just remembering like the not wanting to disappoint people is really coming from a place of people pleasing. So that was really good. Angela, do you remember the advice that you gave me, the considering the trade-offs? Do you want to explain that a little bit when we want to consider the trade-offs when we're making a big decision?
Lisa had mentioned the pros and cons list, and I prefer thinking of trade-offs instead of pros and cons. So, like you said, if it's a job opportunity, what are you trading for? You're trading time for money. So think about that. What what are you giving up in the time you have now to do that? It's a trade-off. And, the energy that you're putting out, what is the trade-off? Or, your family time. Are you willing to spend less time with your family in order to be gone to support your family? And it can be absolutely, yes, my family needs support. I'm doing this. But you need to think about the trade-off and then decide what is it worth it?
That was a super helpful strategy that you suggested. Lisa, what else would we want to consider when we are making a big decision?
Well, the coaching aspect, of course, is going to come out on this episode. And so thinking in any decision, whether it's like you said, what am I having for dinner? Or I don't know how to make fill in the blank recipe, so I have to figure that out too. Like any decision comes with a feeling, a thought, and an action. Every decision we have, whether it's a micro decision or a major decision, is going to have those. And so with coaching someone on discernment about something that they're struggling with or maybe feeling stuck in, or I think the word you used, Emily, was just kind of spinning and spiraling.
Spiraling.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Is to really get curious about what your thought is about that decision. So we've talked a lot about before about asking, is it true? You've already mentioned the phrase, well, it seems like a really good opportunity. And I would take that even a step further, because that's not actually a complete sentence when it comes to coaching. If a client said to me, well, it's just a really great opportunity, I would lean in and say, and finish that sentence, it's a great opportunity for, and if you can't finish that sentence, that's a little bit of an eye opener, isn't it? So just getting curious with what the thoughts are that you're spiraling on, because when you're spiraling, there's definitely more than one thought there, but just to kind of slow it down a little bit from a coaching perspective, to just make sure that the thoughts aren't distorted, because I'm guessing some of them will be, and it's going to be really hard for you not to feel stuck and make the next right decision if your thoughts are distorted about it.
And that's why I reached out to two of my besties to say, hey, you guys, I need help. Talking about it out loud with trusted people, not necessarily even to get permission or ask them what you should do, but to hear your own thoughts reflected back, to ask them, what are you hearing me say here? Give me your feedback, give me your friendly advice, give me your coaching advice. So yes, talking about it with other people is a great strategy. I also love the future self and visualizing. Picture yourself a few years down each path, whether you say yes or whether you say no. I even came across the 10-10-10 rule. Have either of you heard of the 10-10-10 rule? Ask yourself, how will this feel in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years? So just even going there in your mind. If I said yes, how would that feel in 10 minutes? How would that feel in 10 months? How would that feel in 10 years? Another strategy that we have learned in coaching is best case scenario, middle case scenario, and worst case scenario. So say you do say yes and it doesn't work out. Okay, worst case scenario is you just go to the people and say, I'm so sorry, this isn't working out. Often your brain will make it seem like that is a way bigger deal than it actually would be. So future self is a great strategy to think ahead and really imagine what it might be like to be in that role or to have said no to that new role or that move or whatever the big decision is.
I also want to say that some decisions that we have to make in life, you're not going to feel good about making them. It will be a decision on something you don't actually want. It could be filing for bankruptcy, filing for divorce, caring for an aging parent, or, a disabled child, or whatever, that there are really hard decisions to make in life that you're not going to feel good. You're going to have a lot of resistance. It's kind of feels like life is happening to you, and get help. That's my biggest advice on that, is reach out, get some help, maybe reframe it, look at it as an opportunity to move into your future, but a coach or a therapist could definitely help you get there.
I know both of you have heard of this author before, but one of my favorite authors on decision making is Emily P. Freeman. She actually has a podcast called The Next Right Thing. And I've read her book, The Next Right Thing, and her latest book, I think, is called How to Walk into a Room, I believe. But she talks a lot about discernment and looking at it as arrows instead of answers is one of the many tips she'll give. And so, in order to not make a decision from those really tough places that you were just describing, Angela, and you're wanting clarity, but clarity might not be as easy because of things you just talked about. So looking for arrows instead of answers is just one tip that she gives out frequently that I think can also be really helpful.
I guess I can't believe we didn't mention this yet, but prayer. I mean, just asking God for wisdom and direction when it comes to making a decision, and then following the peace that comes. So it, like you said, Angela, it might be a decision that will make you uncomfortable, that won't be something that you had planned for, that won't be something that you might even be looking forward to. But you can also have peace even in making those kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
Like God nudging you, saying, this is the right thing to do. This is what I'm calling you to do. So I love that you brought that up. But yeah, trusting God with the outcome and not asking for that sign from heaven. Sometimes he does give us a big yes in the right direction. And often it's just a little gentle nudging from the Holy Spirit. Like you said, Lisa, like an arrow. Go this way. Just keep walking that way. Follow the peace. And that gets easier once you have done it more too. Asking the Lord every day, okay, Lord, how do you want to direct my steps today? So then when the big decision comes up, okay, Lord, how do you want to direct this step for this next phase or this next chapter or this next season, even? I will say too, touching back on the people pleasing, that comes from fear, right? That fear of failure. So I think naming a fear when you're making a decision, ask yourself, is this a fear of failure? Is this a fear of disappointing other people? Is this a fear of judgment? Am I judging myself about the decision that I'm making? Or even just that fear of change itself, noticing if there are emotions there is really good, just to name it out loud or write it down. Any other closing advice, ladies, that might help our listeners when they're faced with a big decision?
Well, just thinking about what you did when you were making your big decision, you reached out for counsel, and that's biblical. Seeking godly counsel and saying, okay, help. I need friend advice. I need coaching, whatever you got. And so just talking it through helps you process your own thoughts, and it also gets feedback for you.
Yes, and another thing I did, now that you mentioned that, is I gave myself a time window to make the decision. No one gave me a deadline or when I needed to respond back to them. I gave that to myself knowing that that would be good for me, because if I gave myself too long of a window, I just would have prolonged the overthinking, the spinning, the what ifs. And so giving yourself a time window to actually make the decision can sometimes be very helpful as well.
I think in addition to seeking counsel from others, the opposite can be true also in seeking solitude, like seeking just some time with yourself. Like, we just live in such a fast-paced world where everything is easily accessible to us. We can Google all the answers or AI all the answers. And especially when we're making a decision these days, like, we could get decision fatigue just from all the noise. So I'm so grateful that you came to the Marcos with your, hey, I could use some assistance, please. At the same time, we know enough about you to know that you took that counsel and then you sat with it. I just think it's important to put that piece in there too, because life can be so loud most of the time. We are go, 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 whether it's our brain or our physical bodies. And I think sometimes we just have to sit in the discomfort that Angela was just talking about, but just sit and pay attention.
Great point. Well, this has been a helpful discussion, ladies, for me and hopefully for our listeners. So wherever you are standing at a crossroads today, whether it's a small decision or a life-changing one, this is just your reminder that you don't have to have it all figured out. Just take the next faithful step, get the support you need, and we hope that today's discussion gave you a little more courage to do just that. So a couple of takeaways just to wrap up our episode. Not deciding is still a decision. It just happens to be one where fear is the one driving the bus. Start small. Automate those tiny decisions so that you have energy left for the big ones. And then also, confidence isn't about being certain. It's about trusting yourself enough to decide or to take the next step, even without that guarantee. Thank you so much for joining us today in the Life Coach Lounge. We will be back again next Tuesday with another episode. You just never know what topic we will be discussing here in the lounge. If you haven't already, we would love it if you would subscribe to our podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. Share this with a friend who might also need encouragement. Let us know if there's a topic that you'd like us to discuss here on the podcast. We would love to hear your ideas, your questions for a future episode. Thank you again for joining us, and we can't wait to be with you again next Tuesday. And until then, Angela and Lisa, I can't wait to have more conversations with you in the Marcos.